Pleasure coming your way on News Desk. My name is Kimini Nyamani Amano. Never mind that. On the program this morning, we'll deal with a number of issues, including whether or not our churches must pay taxes. Should their profit-making businesses be made to pay taxes? What kind of businesses are we talking about? What does the law say about churches and taxes? We'll find out in the course of the problem. 5,720 female sex workers living with HIV and AIDS, and would want to talk to the Ghana AIDS Commission on exactly what is being done about this very, very huge number of female sex workers. These and many others we are discussing this morning, including the Presidential Task Force raiding some free zones warehouses to make sure they are adhering to the law. We'll bring a live feed from there, and you don't want to miss out on it. Most importantly, you can share your thoughts with me on our social media platforms. Joynews on TV, on Facebook, Kimini Emmanuel on Facebook, or I tweet at Kimini or at Joynews on TV. I'll be so glad to share your thoughts with the rest of us here. In the meantime, let's get into the first matter of the day. And churches engaged in profit-making businesses must fulfill their tax obligations, and that's according to the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning. He says that failure to do so will mean that they will face the full rigors of the law. Now, he cited profit-making ventures such as schools, microfinance institutions, transportation as some of the profit-making businesses that religious organizations were engaged in and yet failed to honor their tax obligations. The minister made the observation Tuesday when he inaugurated the Ghana Presbyterian Microfinance Limited of the Ghana Presbytery Church of Ghana in Accra. And here's his example for why the church must be paying taxes. He says Jesus Christ instructed his followers to pay tax and obey the lands of the law. In inference, he says religious bodies that operate profit-making businesses must respect the laws governing the country. Tekpe said the numerous challenges such as unstable power supply, water shortages, and the lack of infrastructure in schools and hospitals could have been resolved if religious organizations paid the necessary taxes due the government. He also said although government acknowledged the efforts of religious institutions in national development, their contribution to government through the payment of taxes could have improved the current status of the economy. He said even some religious institutions who honor their tax obligations had not been paying the appropriate amount to the state and warned that the government through the Ghana Revenue Authority was developing a mechanism to deal ruthlessly with such organizations. Now, pretty shortly we'll get in touch with the clergy and find out how often they pay taxes, what the law says about their businesses as churches and the payment of taxes. We'll get a tax expert also and look at this matter further. But you can share your thoughts with me already on our social media platforms, Joynews on TV, on Facebook, and Kimini Emmanuel on Facebook as well. But I have Reverend Maxwell Frimpong over the telephone, and we'll just pick his thoughts quickly on this. Thank you very much, Reverend, for joining us here.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Reverend, and so the Minister of Finance is making calls that all churches who engage in profit-making businesses to look into fulfilling their tax obligations. How does this call come to you?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. One thing that I want to say is church is under our law of Ghana, under the Constitution, is classified as an NGO, non-governmental organization. And if it's an NGO, then churches are not supposed to pay tax. However, if churches are engaged in other businesses rather than the core values of the ministry, then they must be paying tax. For example, if the church has opened a company or a firm whereby people are working, then that company that belongs to the church, that company is supposed to pay tax. For example, Methodist Church has an insurance company called Dunwell. So Dunwell is supposed to pay tax to government. But Methodist Church, as an NGO by our law, is not supposed to pay tax.
Now, Dunwell, for instance, is a huge company. Obviously, it may not be able to run away from tax. The observation the minister is making is the fact that a lot of churches own several businesses and are not paying the tax. Are you people paying taxes?
Now, for example, we as a church, you know, like I was saying, by the laws of the land, by our constitution, churches are registered under NGO, non-governmental organization. So from the onset, churches are not supposed to pay tax. And the reason was that from the beginning, churches were into mission. You know, churches were cushioning government of their social, you know, providing social amenities for our citizens. For example, churches were building schools. Churches were building hospitals. Churches were providing water to certain communities. You know, churches were giving scholarship to students to go and study abroad. All these things supposed to be the work of the government, but churches have taken. So on that note, churches were not supposed to pay tax. On the other side of it, when churches veer from their core values and move into establishing businesses, then they're supposed to pay tax. However, if pastors are engaged in businesses other than the preaching of the gospel and seeking to the welfare of our members, then that pastor who owns that business is supposed to pay tax. For example, if I own a transport business, then I'm supposed to pay tax. If another pastor owns, let's say, a pharmacy, he must pay tax on the pharmacy. If another pastor owns a different business. So it will be very wrong on our part as pastors, whilst preaching the gospel to our citizens, to pay tax. That if we have other businesses other than preaching of the gospel, then we may not pay tax. The other side of it is also this. If we are working in the church and we receive salary, we're supposed to pay income tax.
Are you doing that now? Is that what is happening? Is that a practice?
A lot of them are not doing it, which is wrong, but I think it must be corrected. You know, yes.
But tell me something.
It is late, but something can still be done about it.
What does the Bible say about taxes?
The Bible admonishes us to pay taxes. Because one time Jesus went into Jerusalem, and they were asking him that, why is he not paying taxes? Then he sent Peter, go to the seashore, cast your net. You catch a fish. The first fish you catch, open its mouth. You find a coin, use that one to pay taxes for me, Jesus, and you, the disciples. You understand? So Jesus never went against paying taxes. And at a point in time, the Pharisees came and they said, how do you pay tax? He said, we pay tax by whatever we receive. So any income that comes to them, they pay tax out of it, as well as the church receiving tithe. So the church receives tithe into its coffers for development and other things, but if salaries are paid, then we need to pay tax on that. And if we also own businesses, then we need to pay. But as a church, as an entity, the church is supposed not to pay tax.
And so with that background, that biblical background, that legal background, why would our churches fail to pay even their income taxes?
That is what I'm saying. One, maybe a lot of pastors don't know. So they need to be educated on that. Secondly, a lot of pastors may sometimes overlook it, even though some of them may know, but they might overlook it, which is also wrong. But I believe that if that is the position of the government, then by constitution, as I said, they cannot tax churches, but they can tax the workers of the churches. Because if the workers are receiving salary, then they need to pay income tax.
I see.
Bible admonish that.
Absolutely.
But our legal standing, the laws of the land also admonish that. So it is not wrong, if pastors pay tax based on what they do. But it is wrong for the government to tax the church because the churches cushion government a lot. I mean, in Ghana, a lot of the best schools are mission schools.
I agree.
Schools are built on our offerings and tithes. We don't receive any gifts from anywhere. Hospitals are built on offerings and tithes. Clinics, borehole, we provide borehole for communities. All these things are part of our obligation. That is why we don't pay tax. But if the pastor is not preaching alone, but he moves into businesses, then he needs to pay tax.
I agree with you, the church's contribution to national development. But like you mentioned, the reason churches were categorized or described as NGOs, other legal framework, is because they were into a lot of missionary work.
Yeah.
I dare say that we can't say same of churches now, that they are into a lot of missionary works. Perhaps it's time that you started paying taxes for all the CDs you sell in the churches, for all the holy water, the anointing oil, all the sales we make in the church. It's time we pay taxes for them because we don't see the missionary works anymore. And this is coming from the best part of my heart, Reverend.
Yeah, you may be true, you know, on one side, but on the other side too. Let me help you here.
Right, go ahead.
Now, sometimes you will see the pastor selling maybe CDs, selling maybe all other things. Now, most of these things, monies are raised, and a lot of the monies go back into the church. But there are others who may sell it into their pocket. Those ones are there. Because in every society, you will get the miscreants. So the miscreants are there. They will always flout the law. They will always do things in their own way. And some of them may even come into the ministry just to make money out of the ministry. But there are genuine ones also. So genuine ones also. So the point is that you cannot put all of them together. Then what we can do now is the umbrella organization for Christians to go into it to check some of these things. For example, Christian Council of Ghana, another one, Ghana Pentecostal Council, and the National Association of Christians and Charismatic Churches, NAC. These are the three umbrellas we have. So they can go into it in checking some of these misfits in Christianity. You understand? Because we have the genuine ones like maybe the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Catholics, the Anglicans, and even some of these Pentecostal and Charismatic churches. Look at what Central Gospel is doing, Central University, educating a lot of people. People pay school fees, Central University pay tax. Are you getting it? When you go to Pentecost University, students pay fees, Pentecost University pay tax. But they have built the university to help Ghanaians because how many government universities we have in Ghana? It's about 7 or so, which is not enough considering our population. So churches are helping, others are making money. So I believe that the umbrella organizations for Christians, the three I've mentioned, government can sit with them for them to come to the individual churches or the local churches and begin to check some of these things. So where pastors are doing businesses and they are not paying tax, they need to be educated to pay tax. Other than that, they can go far of the law. And if the whole church is like Methodists have opened the insurance company, if the whole church is engaged in a certain kind of business, then they must also pay tax. However, genuine ones are there doing a genuine job. So we can't put all of them in a basket. Other than that, we'll be doing, we are not helping others and we are favoring others to still make the congregation. So that will be my point.
I'm happy you mentioned checking the miscreants who you may have in your midst. And I believe that we are taught in our churches to be our brother's keeper.
Sure.
And so what have we been doing in that regard? Prior to this observation by Finance Minister Setekwe, had we been doing anything as individual churches to make sure that the miscreants do not mar the image of the church?
You know, it's very dicey in the sense that you can't just walk into somebody's church, quote and unquote. I'm using some church, if even though the church belongs to Jesus Christ. But you can't walk into somebody's church and say, I'm coming to check you. You understand? Because of the spirituality attached to it. So somebody say, I've been called as a prophet. And God says, I should do ABC. Now, if the person is using God's name in doing ABC, who are you to say it is not God? That is the dicey part of church, because it is more of a spiritual institution than a physical one, even though it is made up of physical human beings. You know, so, but if the umbrella body, like the Christian Council of Ghana, Ghana Pentecostal Council, and the NAT is up and doing, they can check the individual churches, because then now government gives them the power, gives them the authority that you must check your people. So when they come to your church, then you know that they have higher authority than you. And these bodies are also made up of churches and seasoned and anointed men and women of God. So when they walk into your church, based on information they have, that's what I believe that it will shake a lot of pastors a little. But with the situation we have now, whereby, you know, everybody says, I'm hearing from God. So if the person says, I heard from God, then the question is, who are you to say it's not true? So that is where the problem is now. But if these umbrella bodies have the authority and the power and the backing of government to check the miscreants, then I believe that we can do an effective work, and there can be some sanity in the system for all of us.
Reverend, is there a way around this? First, I'm thinking it's time the church had a strong root in the legal framework of the country. Perhaps that could check some of these miscreants we are talking about here.
You know, the danger here is that if you begin to, let me use the word, attack Christianity, then we're going to have a problem. And the problem is that by law, we have freedom of worship. So some are Christians, some are Muslims, some are traditional. If you begin to bring this law, then it means that you must begin to tax all religious bodies, including the Muslims, including the traditional people, the Kuffour people, and the Malam, and all that. You need to tax everybody.
That is if they are engaged in any money-making.
They are engaging. You will not go to any Kuffour for the Kuffour not to charge you. You will not go to, let's say, Kukubusam or Kukubusam not to charge you.
I agree.
Even if they ask you to go and bring a goat and bring a bottle of schnapps and bring this, at the end of the day, they will ask you, add 100 Ghana cedis to it or 200 Ghana, they are charging you. And can the government check all the traditional people?
And that's why it brings me to the point that it's time we had a proper legal framework that gives proper rooting to our religious bodies.
Well, if we have any religious framework to help us, it will be good. But you know the problem in Ghana, one, our security system is not effective. Number two, since independence until now, we have problem with monitoring. Go to I have worked before. Go to all the ministries. Monitoring is a problem. So the question is, the laws will be there, but who will monitor? For example, the reason why sometimes they talk about churches is that churches are more organized. We see building, people are walking in for church, so churches are more organized. Unlike the traditional people, they are not organized. He is hiding somewhere in the bush, Togbi so and so, or Nana so and so, and who there goes there? That's the point. But then, if you're talking about religion, in nature, all of these people are part of it. So the moment you begin to cast your eyes only on Christianity, then you begin to create a problem. Other than that, then religion as a whole, as we have freedom of worship, whereby some say I'm a Christian, some say a Muslim, some say I go to the shrine to worship my God, which is part of my freedom of right, then we need to look at all these things and say, okay, then the Okonfor people are going to be taxed. The Malams are going to be taxed. Churches are going to be taxed. Mosques are going to be taxed. Other than that, then what we can do now is that by legal framework, if churches say they are NGO, then we must see them being NGO. The social side of their ministry must be seen. As I said, churches that we don't see them doing any social work, like school, hospital, water, and the rest. Then we must begin to tax them to do it. So that if we are not taking tax from you, then we expect you to build a school. We expect you to provide borehole in the community where you are, so that government will not spend money providing a borehole. Then this area, there's no clinic. We're expecting the churches in the area. If one church cannot do it, then the churches must come together to provide a clinic for the community. And I believe that that one will rather help.
Reverend, I'm going to give you a final word. Perhaps you want to share brief advice with those persons we have described as miscreants this morning.
No, as a good citizen, I believe that every good citizen of a nation who works, who do any kind of business, is supposed to pay tax. Government uses tax to develop our nation. Without tax collection, nations cannot develop. That is why our countries are borrowing and borrowing. So I will give this advice to churches and my dear colleague pastors. Apart from the mainstream preaching and our social workers churches, any other business that a church would do or a pastor would do, I would plead with them that they need to pay tax. If they don't know, that they must learn that even when you flout that law, it's a criminal act. You can be arrested and be prosecuted whilst not paying tax. So our advice churches, our advice Christians, our advice pastors, that any kind of business we are doing apart from church, we need to pay tax. On the other side, the community where we are, it is our duty to develop the community. Where there is no water, we need to help the community to get water. Where there is no clinic, we need to help the community. Where there is no school, we need to help the community. Even where we have brilliant children in the community, we need to grant scholarship in helping, because it is not only preaching about the gospel, but helping human beings to develop as Christ asked us to do.
Right. Thank you very much, Reverend. Reverend Maxwell Frimpong is General Overseer of the Overcomers Ministry. And we've been talking about church businesses and the payment of taxes. I still have over the telephone a tax expert, George Jahu. Thank you very much for George Ahu. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newsdesk, George. George, I'm sure you heard my conversation with the Reverend, but let's start off with what the law says about church businesses and taxes.
The law, I would say, does not tax churches. It is now that it is emphasized that churches must be taxed. But from the conversation that I've listened to, I would say that if a church registers a name and transacts business, tax must be paid according to the law.
Very well. And so if, from what you said, what kind of businesses are we looking at? Because it looks like most of the names that have come out are very, very well-established businesses. But within the context of the church, what are the kind of businesses we are talking about?
Yes, we're talking of church doing a commercial business, which the law specifies must pay tax. Whether it is a church, whatever it is, the tax must be paid. Otherwise, there will be distortion in the implementation of the law.
Right. George, let's try and operationalize, or let's try and understand what this commercial transaction or commercial businesses. What are we talking about here when you say commercial?
When we say commercial, it's a church puts up a shop, supermarket,
okay,
and sells commodities or supply commodities.
Okay.
That other people or other businessmen also supply. So that business of the church is a commercial business.
I see. Another angle to this is asking about the churches who sell various products within their churches during several services, from audiobooks of the preachings to anointing oil, holy water, water from Jordan River, and the likes. Will they fall under commercial transactions here that need to be taxed?
Now, we will only go to the law for interpretation in order not to make things complex. What is commercial transaction or supply? The law says when a supply is made to a public member and there is exchange of money for the supply, that business is a commercial business.
And so anytime a supply is made in the church and money is paid for it, it's a commercial supply and a commercial transaction at that.
Yes.
Which deserves some sort of tax.
Yes.
Okay. Now, and so if you were to take a wild guess of how much the country could be making from the churches we have here for development, how much would you put the figure at?
In actual fact, from my perspective, the taxes that are levied on Ghanaians, let's come home, are exaggerated.
Okay.
They are too many. And if we go outside this country, you will look at France, for example. The president there is on tenterhooks. If you listen to him, he told his people that they have conveyed to him that there were too many taxes. That was why they wanted to kick him out of office. So he has less than 2 months to convince the people that he will do better. In Ghana here, the taxes are too many, the rates are too high, to the extent that government has lost control over the essential business that it has been elected into office to do. It's not only this government anyway, the governments before. And this one cannot control rates of taxes, rates of levies, rates of prices, rates of everything. So, you want me to give you a figure? I want you to look at it from this perspective. What we must be looking for now is how do we bring sanity into the economy? By me, given this opportunity, what I will tell Ghanaians is how do we bring sanity into this economy? Because right now, we are hot. you see that we don't know what to do. But by me, it is the tax, especially if you take, say, value-added tax, you will see that it is being taxed 5 times or 10 times more than it should be taxed.
George,
yeah.
Let's stay on the religious bodies, because my belief is that if the country managed to do what the finance minister has said, we can alleviate a lot of the taxes we have imposed on the general citizenry, which, by the way, includes members of the church. And so if we should decide, let's water it down, not just the churches. If we were to decide that all religious bodies who are engaged in profit-making businesses, whichever way it is, with the kind of understanding you have given us with commercial supply, should pay taxes, how should we go about it to ensure there is some sort of sanity in the collection of taxes in that area?
Oh, that one is simple. I will go in for a low tax rate. Low tax rate on this supplies, not the high raised by wrong laws or wrong definitions in the law and so on.
Okay.
Yes. And people will be happy to pay. People, you see, what I find is that we have a wrong notion that citizens don't like paying tax. I am of the opinion that there is no sane person who does not like to pay tax. Because that person is going to argue, I want water, I want electricity. Why is power not constant? Why is water supply not constant? And they tell you it is your tax that does this. So if you don't pay tax, you can't have any point to be arguing. You see. So people will want to pay tax, all right. But the way we go about it, the high rate that has resulted now is a problem.
Right, let's just stay with the church. What I'm asking is, if we wanted to indeed monitor businesses of the church, if we wanted to indeed make sure that all commercial supplies, as per the law within the church and other religious bodies, are to be taxed,
yes,
how should we do it?
It is simple. With the value-added tax like this, value-added tax, it is applying to any commercial supply or profit-making business. So the churches just abide by the law. The tax officers will go in there and register those businesses that they do. They find commercial and then tax them. But there again, that is where I'm saying that. They will kill the churches if they go in with wrong definition of the value-added tax.
Okay.
Yes. They will kill the churches. Now, if they don't only kill the churches, they create more confusion in the economy.
Right, George, let's try and explain what you meant by they will kill the churches if they go in with a wrong value-added tax. Elaborate on that.
Now, you fancy that they go in with this wrong defined value-added tax.
Okay.
They are going to deplete the capitals of the churches. The tithes that the members contribute, they will eat into such monies, and churches will continue to ask money from the members to the extent that the members may become fed up and may even leave the churches. You understand?
And so, George, if you were given the task of doing this, how would you go about it?
Of doing what?
Of making sure that our religious bodies pay taxes. How would you go about it?
First, I will define the VAT, value-added tax, correctly and apply it to them. and to everybody in Ghana.
Okay, so what is this correct definition of value-added tax?
Value-added tax is that tax that is paid by the operator to the tax authority. Sales tax is that tax that is paid to the operator on supply.
How does this change the way someone pays tax?
What is?
I'm asking, the definitions you have given us as being the correct definitions if you, George, were in the position to take taxes from our religious bodies, you will apply.
Yeah.
How does it change the way you collect the tax from the person?
Yes. For example, if let's say we have the 3% flat rate now. Yes. The churches that are paying the flat rate will pay 2%. No, now you see there is one thing. Let me clarify this point. You see, now that the sales tax rate has been raised to 17.5%, the flat rate is supposed to go to 3.5%. Okay. It shouldn't be staying at 3%. So I'm not going to use 3%. I'm going to use 3.5% as flat rate for the churches to pay to tax authority. Do you follow?
I think so.
Yes. And they continue to take their supplies at the sales tax rate of 17.5%. Now, those non-flat rate church operators, because when you have flat rate operators, you have non-flat rate church operators. The non-flat rate church operators will pay in the range of 0 to 3.5%. They will not pay more than 3%, 3.5%. Okay. Yes. That is how I will.
And in your opinion, George, that will be painless for the church to pay. Thank you very much, George, for joining us here. George, who is a tax expert, we've been finding out ways we could deal with this issue if indeed we are to make the churches who own businesses, or let's generalize it, religious bodies who own businesses, to pay taxes and fulfill all their tax obligations. He said he would apply the true definition of the value-added tax. Some of you have been sharing your thoughts already on this matter on our social media platforms. And Nikki K says, let's have good ears to welcome the passing of blames. I don't get it. I'm sure it has nothing to do with us. Rafzanjani for real says, yes, they deserve to pay taxes. They are making huge bucks. Joseph Julius says, this NDC government will kill us. If they cannot rule the country, they should step down. I wonder what's got to do with that. Ike Kofi Winner says, yes, they must. Because now churches don't bank in just offerings. They have cafeterias, bookshops, etc. Surely, if Papaya and Kingdom Books pay tax, why shouldn't the church? Tetakwe Humphrey says, not only business, any offering should be taxed. Churches are duping the poor. They must be taxed 50%. Fifi Faoma Orban says, their revenue won't solve our problems. They should consider putting in some stringent fiscal and monetary policies set up to the finance ministry. Aeon Burley says, yes, churches would have to pay taxes because they're really making money and people are establishing churches because they're tax-free. That's why there are so many churches these days. Isa Tawfiq Farouk says, it is a step in the right direction. Chempo Roja is confused and is asking, now the government wants to tax anything he sets eyes on. The question he's posing now is, what are they actually doing with the taxes they collect? King Farouk Adam says they have to pay tax because most churches even own private universities Example, Pentecost University College. They make huge sums of money. Jamal Abdulaziz says, it's a good idea, but corrupt officials too must be hanged if they embezzle state monies. Abba Moses says they must pay tax. I have been waiting for this for years. Finally, Joshua Asmeni says, even if they pay, they will chop the money. Those are your comments on Facebook. I'm unable to read all of them. There's actually a ton of them. I'll try and read some of them when I return. Don't go away. Thank you very much for staying on News Desk. You can continue to send your messages on Facebook. I'll reach them. Let's get into another matter on the program today. And Enoch Lamte, Chief Inspector who assisted 9 others to steal underground cables, was 700,000 Ghana cedis belonging to Vodafone Ghana Limited, was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment for abetment of crime by an Accra Circuit Court, while 6 of the suspects were freed. Francis Obri, the trial judge who sentenced him last Monday, with 3 others, Kojo Japon, alias Joes, a scrap dealer, Abubakar Al-Hassan Damba, a Kia truck driver, and Abbas Abubakar Enoch, a scrap dealer, said the policeman should not have tried to stop his colleagues from going ahead with to arrest the suspect. Chief Inspector Enoch Lamte, who was said to have at a point been the bodyguard of the former President President Kuffour, made the judge wonder the sort of protection he offered the former president. The trial judge said the police officer did not live up to the standard required of him as a police officer, and urged that cable theft had become rampant these days and needed to be stopped before it drove investors away. Now, while we're talking about this matter, we want to go further into what goes into selecting the people around our economy managers. And to help us do this is David Agbe. He's Executive Director for the Ghana Institute of Governance and Security. It's good to speak to you again, David.
Yes, good morning, Caroline.
Right. David, your initial thoughts on this matter?
It's quite regrettable that, a chief inspector of police would do, such a thing. Involved in such a criminal activity, and so it brings some line of questions as to how big politicians in this country actually appoint people to be their personal security.
Absolutely.
And so they don't do any proper background checks of those personalities before appointing them as their personal bodyguard here and there. They are being pushed by their own friends here and there. This is my brother. He's a mature man, and so I believe that he will be of help to you. He will be able to protect you and all that. So they don't actually give them any proper orientation to do a background check on them, whether they've been involved in any criminal activities before, whether they have a good conduct within their own society and all that. And before you realize that a person is following our former, president and following big politicians, that they are giving them protection. Meanwhile, they have their own agenda of doing any other things which could jeopardize their reputation. And so I think that our politicians need to be careful before, appointing some people. It is not only former President Kuffour alone.
I agree. David, let's explore the ideal ways of doing this. If indeed you'd have to get the ideal person, how must they go about doing this? Because we don't want the situation where not only would we record stealing, but before we know, very essential national matters have been taken into the wrong hands.
Yes, it's true. You see, our view on this matter is that before you could appoint somebody to be your personal bodyguard, what you need to do, if you actually like the person, if you like the characteristics of the person, subject him to some of the security agencies for them to do a proper background check on that personality, to be able to prove a point that, yes, he has a good behavior, he has a good moral standard within his community, he is qualified to guide you, and he does not have any questionable character here and there. And so if the police people are, or any other security personnel are able to do a proper examination of such a candidate, then before you can actually accept him. But here is the case that it is, those big politicians, their friends, who will just, try to influence, them that, oh, this person is a good person, or I've known him and all that, but without doing any proper background check on those personalities.
Let's look at it this way. We are establishing from stats that it is not wrong for that minister, that member of parliament, to recommend a close relation to start with, or someone they are confident in, to protect him or her, or to do some essential services within his or her office for him or her.
Yes, Karen, you as you speak now, I respect you. You also respect me, but it doesn't mean that you know everything about me. And so if you respect your colleague MP, you respect your colleague minister, it does not mean that you have to surrender everything, your life. I mean, security is your life. And so before a friend recommends somebody to you, take your time to also subject such a person to a second thorough investigation, to be able to establish that, yes, this personality coming close to me actually is seeking for my interest. Such a person is looking for, the security of almost every person. And so such a person will be able to provide you a good standard, security, so that your reputation too is not dragged into a mess. As you speak now, look at the story that was, carried, today. It is just trying to suggest that former President Kuffour, those people around him, did not do any due diligence on the candidate before actually he was appointed.
Can you know it all? Can you know the person just because you subjected the person to some scrutiny, or there's some sort of steps you expect them to take? If there are, I would want you to share.
To be honest with you, human beings are complex in all circumstances. And so it will be absolutely difficult for you to know everything about somebody. But then the fundamentals need to be established. To know that at least you have basic information from, the root of the person.
So what sort of information should you be looking out for? What sort of tests should you put the person through?
I think that the kind of text that you need to take the person through, you could get a lot of information from his background, from the community in which that person stays, some of his close confidants, and you could also get some of those information, at least, at a point in time, people, that you stay, around them in the same community, they may tend to know more than you yourself. They will tend to know you more than you know yourself. And so they know people are marking your step every single day at where you stay. And so they know more information about you. And so if you are picking somebody as a security man, let's go back to the basis and tap information from where the person stays, his environment, where he has schooled before, and where he has also worked before, and just trying to get, fundamental information about the person, a profile of the person. And so it will be able to inform you as to whether you should accept such a candidate or not. You cannot get it all, but at least you'll be able to tap in a lot of information that will serve as a guide, for you to be able to appoint such a person as your personal security. Although your job schedule is, a lot, but then you could entrust such, somebody to do all those things, on your behalf.
Right. David, we'll leave our conversation here for now. Thank you very much for your time. David Agbe is Executive Director for Ghana Institute of Governance and Security. Now, I told you at the beginning of the program that the Presidential Task Force is raiding some free zones warehouses to make sure that they are adhering to the law that establishes them as a free zones company. We'll bring you that story in our subsequent broadcast. You want to make time to watch me again at midday on News Today. Thank you very much for staying through the Hour News Desk. My name is Kimini Nyamani Amano. Goodbye.